Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Can I hear something from you so I know that you can hear me? All right. All right. Good. Well, it's quite a week here on the Berkeley campus. We have the two most famous farmers in America are here. Tonight, Joel Salatin. Tomorrow, Wendell Berry. Don't forget. In Zellerbach, 4 o'clock, but you want to get there early. So don't wait till 4 to come. But it should be a really interesting session. I got a couple of announcements before I introduce Joel. The first is the Google Hangout schedule. Bob Martin will be on Wednesday, November 7th at 1:30. They're still looking for questions for this one, submission and participants in the Hangout. Submissions can be sent to Stacy, S-T-A-C-E-Y, at edibleschoolyard.org. Kelly Brownell, who was here last week, he'll be in a Google Hangout on Monday, November 12th at 1 p.m. And Mike Calicrate's Google Hangout will be on Wednesday, November 14th. Couple other announcements. The Daily Californian has a new eating blog, food blog, that's interested in publishing your pieces, especially your journalistic pieces. So if for your assignment you choose to do a journalistic article, they're very interested in seeing it and possibly putting it on their blog. Chris Yee, who's right there, will be around after class. So if you want to do that, talk to him or at least get his email address so you can explore that option. And they're also looking for people interested in writing about food and food issues on a continuing basis at this blog. Let's see what else. November 17th at 6:30, the Berkeley Student Food Collective will be hosting its 4th annual Harvest Gala. $20 to students, $40 to the community. There's information on B-Space, and if you're interested, though, they promised me tabling outside. So you can check that out. It's a great organization. Final projects. The information is on B-Space. If you want to talk about your ideas, come to office hours with Michelle or Allie or me. And several of you have come, and we've thrown around ideas and helped you to focus them. So that's an option, and take advantage of it. Next week, we have a very special session, kind of a multi-sensory food experience. We have 3 talented chefs who are going to be with us cooking on the stage, and Harold McGee, the food science writer. The session may run long, and so I strongly encourage you to vote before you come to class. I want to see a lot of those I voted stickers on all of you. I thought about requiring you to vote before you come to class, but I don't know if I legally have the authority to do that. But I strongly encourage you to vote and have that off your, because I think the polls close at 8, and so get it done before you come, and you know, maybe we'll celebrate something. Our guest. So this is a really great privilege and pleasure for me to introduce my friend Joel Salatin. Joel is best known as a farmer, and as I suggested, he's one of the best known farmers in America and certainly one of the most influential today. But he's also a great storyteller and a terrific writer. In fact, he's written 8 books with all wonderful titles, like Folks, his latest is Folks, This Ain't Normal. And my favorite title of it is The Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer, which he very much is, both ecstatic and a lunatic. And what was the other? Oh, Everything I Want to Do is Illegal is another one of his book titles. And he'll tell us what he's talking about. And it's not what you're thinking, but important nevertheless. He's also a great storyteller on the stage, as you'll see, and he's going to give us something of a virtual tour of Polyculture Farm. This is his 500-acre farm in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. And I mentioned it in the first class when I was giving my lecture, because it was the site of one of my, most cherished epiphanies, which happened, you'll recall, when Joel got me down on my belly to look at the grass and explain to me what's going on between the sun and the grass and the ruminants and the chickens, and how that great dance completely subverts your kind of tragic assumptions about the human-natural relationship, that it's a zero-sum relationship. If you can orchestrate that dance properly, Joel teaches us, in fact, we can get what we need from nature, whether it's food or anything else, while healing the land in the process. And then that message I really carried with me from that farm and all through Omnivore's Dilemma and everything I do. So Joel's had a tremendous influence on my work, and I think he will on yours. So let me introduce the great choreographer of animals, Joel Salatin.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Well, it's a real privilege and an honor to be with you, and I appreciate you all braving the bomb scare to get here. And I'm just hoping I can get home tomorrow to the East Coast, but they tell me things are running okay. What I'd like to do is take you on a virtual tour of the farm to try to connect dots to give you what I call a skeleton, a working skeleton to frame up your overarching thinking about environmentalism, about non-chemical agriculture, that you're learning in other classes. Sometimes, we in a situation, in an institution like this, it's easy to get overbearing on the cerebral, may I say. And so I'd like to break it down a little bit and give you some real practical how-to. And thank you, Michael, for inviting me. This is just such an honor, I can't tell you. Okay. If I can make this clicker work, we're going to zip through this. It's going to take me about, I'm planning to be done within 40 minutes of this, and then we'll do a nice long Q&A time with Michael here on the stage operating. The farm is a polyface farm, the farm of many faces. Dad used to say we're not just two-faced, we're many-faced. And it's located in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, which is, the valley is 80 miles long and 20 miles wide in western Virginia, not to be confused with West Virginia. I mean, that was a big deal, right? And so this valley, back in the early our house, which is right there, I'm told that the pointer is a little bit right there, it's kind of behind the trees, was built in about 1750. And when Governor Spotswood, who was a colonial governor of Virginia in the early 40s, as the Europeans began moving across the Blue Ridge Mountains, they hit Charlottesville, where Thomas Jefferson, all right? I'm trying to make sure we're all on the same page here, okay? And they bumped the mountain, and then they finally started filtering over, and so Governor Spotswood sent 10 friends. He called them the Knights of the Golden Horseshoe. I mean, they were British after all, right? And so he sent them over to the valley to spend a couple of weeks, scope it out, and report back what they found. And they rode through the valley, and they wrote back that everywhere they rode, they could take the grass and tie it in a knot above the horse's saddle. See, we modern Americans, we're brain damaged when we talk about grass. When I say grass, most people think lawn, golf course. No, when I say grass, I'm talking about tying it in a knot above the horse's saddle. I'm talking about you can go to the University of Nebraska at Lincoln today. They've preserved a 2-acre prairie, native prairie, and you walk out in there, and it's 12 feet tall. 12 feet tall, all right? That's twice as tall as even a 6-foot person, all right? 12 feet tall. Make sure we understand here, okay? That's tall grass, right? And it's 3/4 of an inch thick, at the base, and thick as hair on a dog's back, and you just walk out there and you get lost. And then to sit there and to imagine bouncing on the seat of a Conestoga wagon with Laura Ingalls Wilder, and Pa and Ma, going out through there, seeing as far as the eye could see for 100 miles, undulating hills and sand hills of 12-foot tall biomass, you begin to realize where the great soils were built in this country that we have been mining now for 200 years. The biomass is just unbelievable. And so, actually, grass is the lungs of the earth. And when you come to the farm, you will see complete bioterrorism at work. You see, the industry says that we're bioterrorists because we let the chickens run around and actually commiserate with the red-winged blackbirds and indigo buntings and robins, who then take our diseases to the science base, Tyson chicken houses, and threaten their birds with pathogenicity, diseases, and threaten the planet's food supply. So we are on a really different page from the industrial food system. We are believers in holism, that everything is relatives. You can even say it's an Eastern mindset, if you will. See, our culture is probably epitomizes the Greco-Roman Western reductionist, linear, compartmentalized, fragmented, systematized, reductionist, disconnected, individualized, parts-oriented kind of thinking. And that has given us some really cool, clever innovations, all right? But there's another paradigm that says we're all relatives, it's all connected, and it's about us and not me, that brings ethics and morality to act as a boundary over what our disconnectedness is clever enough to concoct. So, for the next little bit, we're going to look at how this integrated rather than segregated approach looks on our little neck of the woods, which is, as Michael said, 550 acres in the Shenandoah Valley. Every landscape is open land, forest, and water. That's a pond there. And those three landscapes, the more we can intersect them, the more they'll be. But at our basis, we really are grass farmers. You know, when we talk about grass, it actually has a much faster energy and carbon sequestration cycle and potential than shrubs and trees. In the echelon of carbon sequestration, grass is first, then shrubs, then trees. It's a much faster cycle. But when I already told you about what I say when I mean grass. All right, I mean, when I say grass, I'm talking about the kind of grass that if you had it, you know, the city beautification committee would come in and cite you for an ordinance violation for letting such, biomass accumulate in your lawn. So we'll start with the forest and we'll go on through. The forest is important for a lot of reasons. And the forest is up in the forest behind our house has a lot of these valleys in it, these swales. And you can see down below here we've built a pond down there. So here we are cleaning off another site to build another pond. You can see the pond down there, and now there's another pond right here. So we're taking out the wood here and we're selling it as firewood to create another pond site. Now, this forest, of course, is a resource in and of itself. And so we use multiple use equipment like this to be able to take these logs out, to load them, and take them down to our little bandsaw mill, which is an 800-pound machine that has a bandsaw here running and turns these logs into lumber. You know, the number one value-added commodity in the world is lumber. And so to be able to be self-sufficient, self-reliant on lumber is a big deal. I call this machine, the ultimate information-based machine. Kevin Kelly, the editor of Wired magazine, wrote a book on new rules for the new economy several years ago, and he talked about how everything today in the information economy is being downsized, restructured, miniaturized. The 120-pound secretary has been replaced by a 4-ounce mail router, that you like to, reach through the phone and kick. But anyway, This is a very simple machine that allows us to turn these logs into boards for our own construction projects. Then we take the branches, run them through our chipper into the manure spreader, and that becomes a carbonaceous diaper in the winter for the cows when they're eating hay. So you see here the ground level, you see the bedding level here. Those cows are dropping 50 pounds of material out their back end every day. Now that's a lot. And that material is extremely fertile. I mean, it's got a lot of goodies in it. The problem is they're highly volatile. If they get dry, they vaporize. And if they get wet, they're soluble and they want to leach. And so during the winter, when we're feeding this hay, under a simple awning like this, we just put a carbonaceous diaper underneath, let the cows eat through a gate, a box that we can raise with pulleys here with a hand crank and just raise them up. and we can house 300 in here eating out of a clean box, so they're not eating, re-ingesting all their pathogens and parasites and worms. A lot of people say, oh, these organic farmers, I mean, it's just, where men grow ponytails and run naked through the woods on moonlit nights, and the women don't shave their legs, everybody just kind of sits back and woo, let nature take its course. Well, if we're not going to use the Ivomec and the parasiticides and the grubicides that make the meat so bad it kills the bugs, and anything that does that I don't want to eat, all right? Well, then we have to institute positive modeling, and a sanitary plate here is one of those positive models. So it just lifts as the cows eat, and we add corn to it, all right, that the cows then push in with their hooves as they walk. And this carbonaceous diaper gets 3 to 4 feet deep. I mean, it's this wood chips and old hay and stuff, and then the manure, and it's actually anaerobic because the cows are tromping out the oxygen. The corn then, all impregnated in it, that ferments as well, so that when the cows come out in the spring to begin grazing again, we go in with the pigarators. Now, these pigarators then go through this bedding, and I don't know if you've noticed the forehead of a pig, but all pig foreheads say, we'll work for corn. And these pigs then seek that fermented corn in the bedding and fluff it up and aerate it and turn it from anaerobic into aerobic compost. Now, you're all familiar with these long windrow compost piles. These industrial big compost piles. They run a big, turner through them, run through these compost. Well, we get all the turning done with animal power instead of equipment. We don't even have to ride these and steer them anywhere. They go on their own volition wherever they want to go, seeking these kernels of corn and fluffing and aerating this great big carbonaceous diaper, turning it into compost. Now, the beauty of this is that instead of using petroleum and machinery to do this, we're using appreciating animals. Now, that fundamentally changes the profitability of it, because now we don't have to run the volume. You ever heard get bigger, get out? We don't have to run the volume in order to recapitalize the infrastructure that rots, rusts, and depreciates. Suddenly now, this is as profitable with 2 pigs as 1,000 pigs. And when you have a model that scales up as well as down, that's a benchmark of truth. Because so many models, especially in the developed world, the techno-glitzy world, they don't scale down very well. They scale up wonderfully. But when we come to technology and infrastructure, typically it doesn't scale up. It doesn't scale down, it only scales up. And of course, that means that the whole system has to move toward centralization and fewer players, because there's less room at the top. But this kind of system democratizes the profit potential and decentralizes it and spreads it out to as many partakers as want to be a part of it. The other thing is that it creates an environment that the pigs love. We're not asking them to do something they don't like to do. It fully honors and respects the pigness of the pig. We live in a culture today that doesn't ask how to make pigs happy. It only views pigs as inanimate piles of protoplasmic structure to be manipulated however cleverly hubris can imagine to manipulate them. And a culture that views its life from that kind of manipulative, mechanistic form will begin viewing its people the same way, and other cultures the same way. That's as close to a sermon as you'll get. All right? But it's true. It's how we honor and respect the least of these that creates an ethical moral framework over how we honor and respect the greatest of these. If we want a culture that preserves the ability of the Maryness of Mary and the Tomness of Tom to be expressed within the culture, we need to have the pigs expressing their pigness. In our world today, the only thing we ask is how do we grow them faster, fatter, bigger, cheaper? And we all know that that's not balance in nature. Nature moves toward balance. There's a reason why elephants are the size elephants are and mice are the size mice are, because to be a successful mouse, you have to be the size of a mouse. And if you were a mouse the size of an elephant, you wouldn't be a very successful mouse. And an elephant is the size an elephant is because an elephant the size of a mouse wouldn't be a very successful elephant. Nature moves you toward things. There's a reason why the average NFL football player is dead at 57, because when your neck is bigger than your head, you're a freak of nature, and nature weeds you out. So what we want is a habitat that allows the pigs to fully express their pigness. And so you can see now this compost is heating, and it's like Macbeth, it's very surreal in the spring. And the reason that we do all this is because, doesn't yours come out that way? All right. I just got back. I've been on Australia for 2 weeks, and their dollar is like, $1.05 of ours or something like that, and I had to apologize for, I need to get an Australian one, it's more valuable. But anyway, this is the resource. And the problem is, in our culture, we have not capitalized on this resource. 75% of all the manure produced in America never gets used. 75%, because we have a fundamentally segregated food and farming system. My favorite question now when somebody starts, getting on me about industrial farming and we need industrial farming and all this, I just look at them and say, why are you such a segregationist? That's a powerful word, okay? But it's important because we have to understand that many of the problems in our food and farming culture are a result of a segregationist attitude. That these very closely integrated loops that nature developed, the patterns of tight carbon cycles, of solar energy converted to biomass that decomposes or digests on site, the food that's grown and eaten locally, these tight, the scraps that go through the chickens or the pigs, the food scraps, all of these things used to be very tight cycles because in a day of draft power and laborious transportation, you couldn't break apart those old cycles. But today, with cheap fuel and transportation, we've been able for the first time in human history to dramatically segregate. So we get the fertilizer from over there, we synthesize it over here, we transport it over here, we grow grain over there, we sequester the animals in factories over here, we send the manure over there, we send the food over there, and we eat it over here, and our human poop goes over there. And the whole beautiful, intricate, related, integrated system has been broken up into segregated liabilities rather than an integrated blessing. So, it goes into it's all nice and composted, goes in the manure spreaders, out to the field with some pulverized rock to feed the soil when the microbial activity is, I'm going to watch my time here, is alive. And then we can throw poultry netting around there and raise ready-to-lay pullets or chickens in there off-season, again, using multiple-use infrastructure. We talk about, multiple-use land use. When you think about multiple-use infrastructure, and this is one of those options. And so we can raise ready-to-lay pullets for all the Dilbert cubicle refugees fleeing from the city, working for Fortune 500 companies and getting all stoop-shouldered and hunched over because they're sitting in front of a computer all day. That want to come out to the farm and have a little farmette or a pleasant life in a country. You can call it a land yacht, or you can call it liberty, or whatever you want to call it. But they want to have some chickens, and so we allow that to happen. Very simple structure. I want you to just notice the construction here. This is essentially pole timber. 90% of the world's like this. They don't have to have dressed timber and all this stuff. This is just pulled out of the woods. It's very, very simple. This is the way people live in homes in most of the world, And the cows really don't care if it's not perfect. They just really don't care. So the pigs are in there, and when they get done, they come out into pig pastures. All right, and these are pastures that are divided with electric fence. Of course, pigs are omnivores, so they do get GMO-free, no GMOs. This is fun to talk here in this group and not even have to define what GMOs are. Usually, half the people are, what's GMO? So you got to explain it. So I don't think y'all need to, everybody's with me, right? You don't, okay, all right. Okay, so we use all GMO-free, local grains. So they get a cafeteria style of the grain and they get all the grass they want, and every few days they move on to the next spot. So they get this cornucopia of salad bar. They sing opera and all sorts of things. And they get this fresh ground all the time. But where they vacated, where they've been for a few days, yeah, pigs tear it up. This is disturbed, okay? But here's the key. It's that disturbance that awakens this latent seed bank that's in the soil waiting to be expressed. There is a huge amount of diversity of seeds that last even 1,000 years in the seed bank that are awaiting a disturbance factor to express themselves. The problem is that we have taken away those disturbance factors. If you start a fire today, the fire company comes and puts it out. We used to have herds of 3 million buffalo. We used to have elk and antelope and turkeys and pheasants and prairie chickens and all sorts of disturbance. But these things, would mob across the landscape, chased by predators, both human and non-human. And these were disturbance factors that kept this diversity moving in the soil. Today, we are not bringing that disturbance to the ecology. And I'm going to belabor this point because of where I am right here today. And that is that we have this radical environmental fringe today that believes the best ecology is done by environmental abandonment. That the only way to save the planet is for all of us to go in and die tomorrow. If all of us would die tomorrow, then everything would be healthy. Well, I find that a really hard idea to market. I mean, it just has some problems with it. But to be truthful, humans have done a tremendous amount of damage. Can we agree on that? Yes. Okay, so I repent in sackcloth and ashes for all that my ancestors have done. But at the end of the day, when I go and look at the mirror, I don't want to have a guilt trip. So I look in the mirror and I say, so why do I have this big brain and opposing thumbs? Why was I bequeathed this? And let me suggest, the reason that I have it is in order to bring this big brain and opposing thumbs to this ecological womb in which we live with the correct amount of disturbance massage so that this womb becomes more efficient at converting solar energy into decomposable biomass that feeds the soil than the womb would if left in a static state. That's my mandate. All right? We don't have fire anymore. We don't have buffalo anymore. We don't have the elk, the antelope, and all the, the marsupials and whatever else. But we have pigs with high-tech electric fencing that we can control to create exactly the amount of massage at the right time, which then kicks in ecological succession through the disturbance. I mean, we have lots of metaphors. I mean, we all know if you're going to go build a house, you have to argue, first of all, with your significant other about how big it's going to be, where it's going to be, what it's going to be built out of. And then finally you agree on blueprints, and the backhoe comes and gouges down and pours footers, and everybody's yelling about, don't drag the mud in the car, right? And we have, Einstein said, before you can have construction, you must first have destruction. Business books, sacred cows make the best burgers. In business classes, we're always studying the shakeup of companies as they, innovation is disturbing. When our paradigms are challenged, it's disturbing. The Egyptians have the idea of the phoenix rising out of the ashes to celebrate this with a metaphor. Everybody likes to focus on the beautiful phoenix, but we don't like to focus on the ashes that were necessary for the phoenix to rise. If you're going to have a garden out in the back, you don't just take carrot seeds and beet seeds and throw them out in the lawn and say, "Whoa, now I've got a garden." No, you've got to get a spade and a shovel, and you've got to do some disturbance, build some beds, and right? Compost piles are disturbing. Disturbance is necessary for succession, for innovation to occur. Okay? I know we're heading into a political campaign, but I just can't stand to not say it here. And that's the problem, folks, with both the Bush and the Obama bailout plans is that they didn't allow the level of societal and economic Wall Streetified disturbance to occur to create ashes for a phoenix to rise. They just propped up an outmoded Neanderthal evil status quo and did not allow the level of disturbance to succeed to an innovative thing. That's another benchmark of truth. When there's something that goes all the way from ecology to economics, you're onto something. But this is what comes. This is a latent seed bank that's ready. I call this my biological cathedral. Okay, we never planted a seed. We never did anything. It's just 20 years of pigs, and boom, here it comes. So the pigs are that disturbance factor to bring the successional change. Now, when the pigs are done there, they go over next door into the woods, from the pig pasture into the forest finishing glens. These are just nylon ropes wrapped around trees. The pigs go through there, eat out acorns, and create disturbance in the woods. What a lot of people don't realize is that the entire Appalachian region of the U.S., that wonderful, those oak hardwoods, the whole Appalachian region is dying. And the foresters know the reason the trees are dying is because of a lack of disturbance. But you can't disturb them anymore because we don't have the freedom to do that. So what we're trying to do is run pigs through there to disturb it, and they actually stimulate the decomposition of the leaf duff and this static immovable carbon blanket and incorporate it to build soil. And this gradually brings on an understory of forages, legumes, forbs, grasses, that actually make more solar interceptors to create more biomass per square yard than would in a static, unmolested state. Does it make sense? I mean, this is such a beautiful system. Okay? It just works. It works because it is not new. It is taking those natural indigenous patterns, those templates, if you will, and saying, how does nature work? And then laying it down on a domestic commercial production model and say, how can we most closely approximate those ecological patterns? Now let's go to the grass. Let's go to cows. All right, another demonized, marginalized, almost criminalized system. But the cow is an herbivore, all right? We all know the difference in herbivores between carnivores and omnivores and herbivores. A cow is essentially a great big four-legged portable sauerkraut vat who takes in herbage, biomass, ferments it, and then creates this wonderful meat and milk. And so we look at cows and we say, well, what was their role in nature? What are herbivores? And there are a lot of herbivores around the world. I mean, giraffes and zebras and elephants and alpacas and llamas and reindeer and caribou and buffalo and cows and sheep and yaks. And I mean, there's a lot of herbivores when you start thinking about it, right? Well, what's their role? All right, everybody follow me. We're not going to break out into song here, but I want you to follow my S. Everybody see my S curve? My S curve. Okay. 3 parts of that S, right? All right. This part here, diaper grass, teenage grass, nursing home grass. All right? Now, if my job is to make sure that the biomass is at its most efficient, rapid solar conversion into biomass and carbon sequestration, if that's my job, of those 3 sections, where do I want the forage, the grass, to be most of the time? Teenage. Thank you very much. You guys must go to college. Okay, so teenage. If I overgraze it or I undergraze it, the photosynthetic activity shuts down. And so the herbivore, the role of the herbivore in nature is as a biomass accumulation restart button. Without the herbivore, the forage just goes into senescence and decline and volatilizes everything, carbon dioxide, back into the atmosphere. And if the herbivore, and if it's not there at all, then there's no biomass assimilation. So the herbivore is the biomass assimilator, is that pruner to take that grass and prune it back to restart. And so, again, we look at nature and say, well, how does nature use these herbivores? I mean, how are they used? Well, you see 3 things. They're always mobbed up for predator protection. They're moving onto new ground, and they're mowing. You got the 3 M's: moving, mobbing, mowing. They're not eating dead cows and chicken manure and corn. They're fermenting cellulitic carbohydrate and protein biomass and restarting it so that it can metabolize more solar energy. Now, these herbivores then are actually taking all of that biomass and converting it into manure and urine, which actually stimulates additional production of that biomass. And that's, of course, how the soils were built in the world. The pampas of Argentina, all the deep, fertile soils of the world, including North America, were built with herbivores and perennials, not annuals. Now, you know, it's amazing. Any little child, any, 9, 10-year-old has already had enough biology to know the difference between an herbivore, a carnivore, and an omnivore, right? So when I have school kids out to the farm, I'll always ask them, about, and of course they get cows, herbivores. What do herbivores eat? Plants. Well then, can any of you children, I'm role-playing here, okay, with me. Can you tell me why our country's most credentialed, expert, scientific community for 30 years told us to feed cows dead cows? I mean, for 30 years, they took farmers like me to free steak dinners at, the steakhouses to teach us this new scientific basis of feeding cows, where we cook them and we take off the precipitate and the meat, and we feed it back to cows. And of course, today we're still feeding chicken feathers and chicken manure and chicken carcasses and bones to herbivores. Can anybody tell me why that is? And the reason is because we don't respect the cowness of the cow. We have fundamentally viewed life from a mechanical perspective. And there's a big difference between machines and life. The difference between biology and mechanics is the ability to heal. If you walk out of here today and you get in your car and suddenly there's this ugly thump, thump, thump coming from the right front wheel bearing, you can get out of that car and you can go around to that thing and you can start I'm so sorry, I didn't lubricate you, I didn't take care of, please forgive me. I mean, you can ask for all the forgiveness in the world from that wheel bearing. I mean, you can put hands on it, pray over it. I mean, you can say, I'll give you a week of rest. You just rest. It's okay. You can sit in the car, read the newspaper every day, take a rest. As long as you want to, when you come back and get in the car, what's going to happen? Thump, thump, thump. But if you have a wound on your hand, it can heal. And we can be very, very grateful that living things heal. We don't have to just be unhealed scars, emotionally or physically or spiritually. Life can heal. And that's the fundamental difference between biology and mechanics, in my opinion. And so, we're looking at these herbivores saying, all right, let's go to this landscape. They've been used forever as healers, as soil builders, as carbon sequesterers. How do we duplicate that pattern to make it happen again? And so, we use high-tech electric fencing. This is not a Luddite farm. All the people in the industrial community, they look at me and they accuse me of being, a Luddite. You want to go back to washboards and hoop skirts and hearth cooking, as romantic as that might seem to somebody. I'm not interested in going back. This is not Grandpa's farm. I mean, in 5 minutes, I can show you 12 things that Grandpa would have given his eye teeth for. There's never been a more exciting time to live than today. And part of this is electric fencing. I mean, who would have thought that you could just, with a little strand and 1 amp of power that one little deep cycle battery can run for a month, can energize a little piece of wire like this and keep 1,000 cows in paddocks and control them as well as concrete. It's amazing, all right? Well, maybe not as well as concrete, but anyway, close. All right, so electric fencing is the way. So we move the cows every day, so we're making and unmaking the fences. What do you do if the grass doesn't grow, like, in California when it gets dry or whatever? So we stockpile forage ahead of the cows. This is 100 cows on 1/4 of an acre a day. This room is probably about 1/4 of an acre or a little bit smaller. So 100 cows, they come in. Here it is the day before. You can hardly walk through it. 24 hours later, a mouse has to carry lunch in a knapsack to make it across, all right? But look at this mulch. Look at this carbon. Look at this chipped up, shredded. You see that? See, that is soil building, okay? And then we're not going to graze it again until it goes through that blaze of growth period. Well, what does this do? What this does then is that in our county, the average cow days per acre, and a cow day is what one cow will eat in a day, all right? That's one cow day. In our county, the average cow days is 80 cow days per acre. In other words, an acre of pasture will support one cow for 80 days a year or 80 cows for one day a year. Everybody with me on cow day? All right, you're pretty sorry. I know you follow that. Okay, on our farm, we're averaging more than 400 cow days per acre. That's 5 times the county average. I want you to think about how much more solar energy we are putting into biomass and how much more carbon sequestration is occurring under the ground as a result of growing that additional vegetable material. 5 times as much. So in 50 years, we've gone from an average of 1% organic matter to 8% organic matter using these historically normal patterns. To drive it home, here's Cape buffalo and lions in Botswana, South Africa. Here's cows and electric fence in Swope, Virginia. Do you see the biomimicry? Okay, the soil building, the carbon sequestration. So here we are with 80 dry cows in February. See the snow out there? Here we are with 300 in August. Okay, same principle. There's a mob of 300 getting ready to move into their next spot. You can see here where they've just been. You can see where they've been a few days before. Here's where they're coming today. So every day at 4 o'clock, they move into the next paddock, and this is a paddock that's been rested to let that biomass accumulate and go into another area. Now notice here the bobbing of this. Doesn't that look like a wild herd, you see on Nature or whatever? Okay, well, it's done with the electric fence, all right? That's what defines the area. Now, water gets to be important. What are you going to do? Well, we built a lot of ponds. We don't want this to happen. I mean, cows aren't potty trained. If you drank out of your toilet, you'd probably have worms too, right? So we do an amazing thing. We put water in a pipe. We have black plastic pipe that Grandpa didn't have. So we've strung miles of water line on the farm that gravity feeds, just using simple infrastructure like this, and gets us water everywhere. This is the portable cow shelter. So we want to get the manure and urine out in the field so we can place the shelter where they want it instead of losing it under here. So we built a lot of ponds. And then we gravity feed down from it with a network of water lines that give us gravity-fed water, no electricity, no pumps, just gravity, which we think will last a long time. The day gravity stops, I'm out of here. Boy, we really noticed that this summer. Many of you may have heard about I've heard it said Dericho, rhymes with Jericho. But anyway, D-E-R-E-C-H-O, this windstorm we had out west. I don't know if you heard about it out here, but it was a pretty big deal, and a lot of places were out of power for a week. And I mean, we had our issues with it, but water was not one of them. We always had water. The water gravity just kept on working. It didn't care how much the wind blew. And then, of course, you can even use it for irrigation as well. Why? To take the water that's a problem in the winter runoff time and hold it back and use it in the summertime. See, we believe that our role as this big brain and opposing thumbs, remember, is to bring redemptive capacity. I think Michael Pollan talks about resiliency, shock absorption. The fact is, you do have floods, you do have droughts, you do have hurricanes and winds and all this stuff. Nature's not always a benevolent partner. And so our responsibility is to come to that and build forgiveness into it, so when the droughts or the floods or the winds or the cold or the heat come, the land is able to handle the shocks in that system. And part of that is getting control of the water. Now, those cows drop a calling card, which is, of course, an incubator for pathogens and parasites. And so we look at that and say, well, how does nature sanitize behind the cows? And we find birds. In every nature program, you see a herd of herbivores. There's always all these birds, and they're scratching through the cow patties, eating out the fly larvae, and converting the manure in, spreading out the manure, eating the fly larvae, and sanitizing the paddock. So these are portable eggmobiles. Batman has Batmobile, we have our eggmobiles, okay? And these are just portable hen houses that run out through the pasture, and the chickens, instead of us paying them to work for us, they go out and do their wonderful chickenness and give us hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of eggs each year as a byproduct of the pasture sanitation. Suddenly now we don't have to use pharmaceuticals. We don't have to put the cows in a corral and in a head gate and lose our religion or our leg or whatever. The chickens are doing this work for us, our partners, and they don't depreciate. So the question is, which would you rather live next to? See, we fundamentally believe that a good food system from field to fork should be aesthetically and aromatically, sensually romantic. You know, we have our senses for a reason. How do you know if a wound is getting infected? You can smell it. When you go out here and smell a farm, that's a wound. It's infected. Don't tell me it's pure country air. You know, so what we do is we pass these, you know, right to farm laws, which are basically right to stink up the neighborhood laws. So what we want is a system that is so clean and aesthetically pleasing that any kindergarten class would want to come out and be a part of it. And, you know, if you have to walk through sheep dip and put on a hazmat suit to go visit your farm, you might not want to eat what comes from it. The chickens like it too. This is egg production. This is the Millennium Feather Net. This is 1,000 birds. This is a land-intensive idea. The other is a land-extensive, using high-tech, space-age electric netting to keep the coyotes and foxes out and keep the chickens in. You encircle them, you open it up, and they just walk into the next spot. These are the innovation early adopters up here. Here are the remedials down here. All right. Okay, so you just pull it in, and there you are. There's the whole infrastructure. There it is. See, this is a system that works equally well in our country and in developing countries. Think about developing countries where there's still these high rate of infectious diseases because of the lack of hygiene and sanitation. You got chickens running under the squat pots from the mud huts. Well, you could put all of this material in your checked luggage on an airplane, head to Kenya, and in no time at all, encircle all the poultry and let the ground rest from hosts, right? And move them around, and suddenly you eliminate the hygiene, you grow more food, and now you don't have people dying of infectious diseases. There are so many ways that this applies, and that's another benchmark of truth, in my opinion. When you have a model that is equally useful in both a developed and a non-developed country, that is when you have a model that's pushing truth. All right, so there's a faraway picture of it. This is a simple skid structure. Predation, so we use a guard dog. There's Michael. Everybody loves Michael. So it's a beautiful system. In the winter, the chickens come into tall tunnels or hoop houses. You know them as tall tunnels. There's rabbits over here, chickens underneath. You can put pigs underneath. And the chickens are up here on a portable mezzanine, okay? So the point is that you've got all of this activity going on. You're using the cubic footage of a structure with symbiotic, synergistic multi-speciation instead of one single speciation. This confuses the pathogens because most pathogens are species specific. So a pathogen comes out in a chicken dropping, hatches out, and is next to a pig dropping. Oh no, where am I? I'm lost, And they don't know how to procreate or find a mate or where to build a house because they're all confused with all these different animals in there. So that's the way this keeps clean. And then when the animals come out, we can grow vegetables in there as a byproduct of the winter housing in the compost that the animals debugged and fertilized for us. What are you going to do with unuseful infrastructure? Well, you just throw a feeder on it and raise turkeys. So we're using portable infrastructure, the racking house, pigs in the winter, chickens and rabbits in the summer. This is a multi-speciated, multi-use facility. The chickens sanitize behind the rabbits, and they're really tasty. And then the little bunnies can come out in these portable little, we call them hairpins. They get down at the end of the field, make a hairpin turn, and it really works. And this is our son Daniel. I know his shirt there says Jerry. Processing rabbits. we get these old used uniform shirts from the uniform store. People that died on the job or got fired or something for. A couple bucks. So, I might be Pablo one day, Juan the next, Jerry the other day. They only cost 50 cents. The IRS lets you fully deduct the cost of clothing if it has a name on it. It doesn't say it has to be your name, so it can be anybody's. But You know, and for those of you that are grossed out of this, you want me to move on and get away from Thumper? See, the point is that Daniel has had these rabbits since he was 8 years old. This was his project, his entrepreneurial project, and he's been line breeding these rabbits for probably the largest non-vaccinated, non-medicated, forage-based genetics in the country since he was 8 years old. 23 years, no outside genetics, line breeding. The acid test, check the liver. If the liver's healthy, then it's right. We don't care what color they are. We don't care how big they are. We don't care anything about them except are they healthy. That's the only thing. And the problem is today with our pharmaceutical compulsion in this country, we have dumbed down the immunological terrain of our livestock and our plants to the point where, you know, they don't have a built-in immunity system anymore because we've been now for a generation assuming that anything that gets sick, plant or animal, is simply pharmaceutically disadvantaged. And that is dumbing down, that is adulterating the genetic stock. And then, of course, the cats, the carnivores get into it as well. Chickens, all right. Chickens come in, day old, go into the brooder house, along with turkeys, and then with deep bedding. And then we move them out at about 2 to 3 weeks into the field in floorless shelters. There they are, their first day on pasture. They're pretty little. So they're surrounded by a shelter that we move every day to a fresh spot. There's about 75 birds in each one, and we just move them along the field to the next spot, and they drop all their manure on the grass. They get to eat the grass that's there. They get to pick up bugs and worms, and of course the GMO feed. So here it is, you know, before they've gone on. Here it is 24 hours later, and you can see the difference there. Again, it's a 1 day a year and then a long rest period. At 8 weeks, they're ready to go using simple waterers. Dip and carry, this coming from the pond again, gravity fed. Turkeys, they're pretty exciting. You know, there's a reason we say you turkey. Little baby turkeys called poults, they have one great idea about life. Their goal in life is a more creative way to die. And so what we've found is that we raise them with 5 chicks. So we raise 1 turkey to 5 chicks as little, you know, little babies, and it takes 5 chick teachers to keep a turkey alive. And so they kind of surround him and say, oh, that's manure, that's feed. Whoa, that's sawdust, this is water over here. You know, and they kind of shepherd them around. But at a 5-to-1 teacher-student ratio, the turkeys do fine. And so you can see here, chick, turkey, you know, turkey, chick, you know, and they just kind of coexist. And then the turkeys come on out into a portable netting. This is the gobbledygook. There you go with this is the gobbledygook. It's a portable shelter with a feed trailer in front. You see the cows down here ahead of them. The turkeys are here eating the shorter grass that the cows have done. Here's eggmobile birds right out here because the eggmobile's following the cows back up in here. And so you have this wonderful choreographed dance going across the pasture, all symbiotic. The birds, of course, have their own politics and do their stump speechings like the rest of the turkeys do. And it's child-friendly. You know, this is Rachel. She's now, 26 years old. She hates this picture, but it's cute, and it makes the point that this is child-friendly, family-friendly. You know, we're not applying anything to the soil that you can't eat, you know, in certain quantities. But it's very child-friendly. And so here you've got cows, you've got turkeys, you've got broilers. The eggmobile's probably over here somewhere. And it's the multi-speciation across the pasture that becomes so productive. And then we process the birds right there on site in our processing facility. And it's extremely efficient. And the birds don't have to go on the road anywhere. They don't send feathers up the road anywhere. It's our grandsons. They get into the act too. It's a family deal. And then you have chicken that's unbelievable in the world that is pasture-based, never been inside of a factory house, that's had exercise, fresh air, sunshine. Then we compost all the guts right there and use them for fertilizer on the pastures. Now I'm going to wrap up pretty quickly. We've got exciting things going on where we're germinating new young farmers. This is Nathan on one of the farms that we lease with the beginning of his little raw milk herd share dairy. And so we traded him some land for his moving our big mob when they were there. Here's his portable milk parlor. Okay, I think it's pretty unconscionable that we have the U.S. that has determined that it's perfectly safe to feed your kids Twinkies, Cocoa Puffs, and Mountain Dew, but it's unsafe to feed them raw milk or compost-grown tomatoes or Aunt Matilda's homemade pickles. And they're supposed to be the repository of food safety? Give me a break. This is as clean as it gets right here, okay? And that's as good as it gets. Germinating young farmers to go out and take over. This has been raising Freedom Rangers on the neighbor's place. Here's his chickens right here running through. This is the French La Belle Rouge, which is 20% slower growing than the U.S. Cornish Cross. And it gives our customers a choice for a broad-breasted bird that's not as big as the Cornish Cross, grazes a little better. He's raising pigs, farrowing pigs. And, yeah, that's pretty. We eat them too. You know what? Listen, folks, everything's eating and being eaten, and if you don't believe it, go lie naked in your flower bed for 3 days and see what gets eaten. All right. Dan took over our horticulture, mulberries, some of his garden plants. These are the broiler shelters out there, okay? But germinating new young farmers. These are shiitake mushroom logs here. Symbiosis. That's a wine-cap stropharium mushroom there, mycelium. His wife fixing dinner here. We eat together and then it's over, and that's one of the joys of this. It is seasonal. There's a seasonal pulse to the farm this way. What we've done now, we've created a farm that we don't want people to come to. These grace the gates of all industrial farms. Stop. Here's ours. Parking. What kind of a food system is it if you can't let people come and visit it? So here's the sales building. There's our house, Mom's house, wood pile, equipment shed. Okay. Wendy taking care of customers there in the sales building. Her daughter Maddie. This is a map of the farm that our daughter Rachel made using CAD design because everything moves. So she made magnets with pictures of the different things. So every day we move the animals, whether it be, so visitors can go and visit where they are. And we want people to come and get in touch with their food, to play on the farm, to have these wonderful visceral memories that actually awaken a relational, connected reality in there that actually now we know actually awakens digestive enzymes. It lets us digest food better if there's a memory there. So we do encourage people to come to the farm. We do farm days. We encourage students to come. This is Bree right here, one of our staff who does these grass stains tours, bringing kids from the city or anywhere, from homeschoolers to inner city to whatever. She just had a group of autistic ones last week, she told me, and they just went nuts over the animals. But to be able to get them out there, get them in touch, and reconnect them viscerally, not cerebrally, but viscerally, with their ecological umbilical. See, this is fundamental to life. There's Bree teaching. We do food fairs. One of the funnest things we do is go to food fairs, and then we cook on site and give samples of our sausage to the children of vegetarians. Once our vegetarians realize the best way to heal the plants with pasture-based livestock, they have to binge to make up for lost time. They become our best customers. So this is putting together buying club stuff on farm. These are interns working. This is a buying club drop in the city. This is Richard, our driver here. Richard, our driver, he's set up here with our buying clubs. We service about 5,000 families in the city. There they are, lined up to get their clean farm food. We work with another half a dozen farmers in the area that do artisanal, high-quality, integrity product from mushrooms to cheese to vegetables, and they put their stuff together and get it on the truck. We bring a Chef Appreciation Day out. It takes a lot of people to do this. There's my wife, Teresa, our bride of 32 years. She's doing the books there. But this is all about making a farm that will romance the next generation into it, which is the ultimate sustainability. But you have a bad day sometimes. I mean, things just don't go very well, okay? But I'm telling you that if you continue to stay on the high moral road and let ethics drive you and let your value system and convictions stay with you, then indeed you'll be blessed. That cornucopia will come your way. It'll always take people, and so I always love to showcase our wonderful interns, and one of our apprentices that just finished with us is here tonight. Noah, you want to stand up and wave here? There we go. One of the best we've ever had, I might say, and he's helping Terra Firma Farm be successful. So Interns. And it's wonderful at this stage of my life to be surrounded by this youthful, enthusiastic energy. So many farmers age as a bunch of, old curmudgeons. And that's a shame, because what we're really after is making sure that the family stays there, that the land stays in the heritage, that the community stays vital, and that enough other people reach their goals that we reach ours. And working together, we'll find our opportunity at the end of a rainbow. I don't know what yours is today, but I trust that you'll pursue it with all the passion in your heart, the conviction in your soul, and you'll find that dream at the end of your rainbow. Thank you so much for letting me visit with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Whoa. I told you that'd be a treat. Thank you, Joel. I think we have a lot of questions, but I'm going to start with one and then turn it over to you guys. What stands in the way of 1,000 of these farms or 10,000 of these farms? Why aren't they routine?
Well, I think the number one thing is just paradigm. I mean, it's the shift of paradigms. Farming has followed that industrial path that let's be very honest, is very similar to the path that the eater has followed. I mean, we came out of World War II and we entered this, industrial age where, I mean, face it, in our culture, there for 20 years, breastfeeding was considered barbaric and Neanderthal. And we raised a generation of, asthma sufferers on Enfamil and Similac. And it wasn't until the hippie, the Vietnam era, the peace movement, and the beaded, bearded, braless Woodstock, generation, Mother Earth News. I mean, who would have thought in the 1950s that by the early 70s we would have La Leche League, Lamaze, all these things. And this was all a part of reconnecting to this, realizing that life is not just inanimate. There's a spiritual, emotional, biological dimension to this. It's not just factory. It's not just concrete nails and stuff. And so farmers, following, as we got, Velveeta cheese and TV dinners and things, and began eating fast food and food that wouldn't rot. If food won't rot, it probably won't digest. And farmers, it was kind of a two-themed approach in the culture as the food system allowed itself to get sucked into this, I call this mechanical view of food. And now the food community is beginning to wake up, and there are many of us in the system that realize it is more than mechanical. But most farmers have now gotten stuck in that industrial model, with their markets, their production models, their overcapitalization and single-use infrastructure. A lot of them don't have the, they're enslaved by the technology. And my heart goes out for them. I mean, it's tough for them. And so I think it's gonna change. Just the way all grassroots paradigm shifts change culturally is, one eater, one farmer, 1 acre at a time, 1 kitchen at a time. And it'll gradually change. And we will get better at what we do. And, that'll attract more people.
But there are also some real impediments, right, that the government puts in the way of doing this kind of
You're
farming.
baiting me. Well, yeah, there are some real impediments. I mean, if you know my book, Everything I Want to Do is Illegal, it tells the story of the number of roadblocks that have been put in place. And again, this is all part of a segregated thinking. According to a Pew survey, 85% of Americans believe the government is responsible for their food safety. Now, you could either say, I look at that and say, well, the good news is there's still 15% that haven't bowed to Baal, But the bad news is that 85% actually think that the government's responsible. And when you say the government, it's important to realize this is the government that told us to feed dead cows to cows, that gave us DDT, that has now, now protecting GMOs, irradiation, corporate welfareism. You can just go down the line. And so there's a tremendous amount of regulatory and policy inertia, including subsidizing grain. We don't subsidize perennials, even though we know they grow soil. Annuals tear down soil. All the 6 commodities that the U.S. subsidizes are annuals, not perennials. And so there's a total policy and regulatory climate that militates against these kinds of systems. If I wanted to go out and make some chicken broth and sell it to a neighbor or Aunt Matilda next door, there's a host of bureaucrats and zoning regulations and all these things, in between that transaction. And so that's why I'm an advocate of what I call the Food Emancipation Proclamation, where we essentially say that every American has the right to choose the food of their choice. And what good is it to have the right to have guns and to vote and to worship and assemble if we don't have the right to choose the fuel to feed our 3 trillion internal community of beings that gives us the energy to express itself in shooting, praying, worshiping, and voting? Well, it comes down to who owns me, who owns my body, and I would suggest that this is probably one of the most fundamental human rights that there is my right over controlling my own body and owning this internal community of beings. And you know what? If that scares you, fine, go eat the government-sanctioned food. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have government regulation. Why can't we have 2? Why can't we allow the natives to make their choice? We're back to the classic tension of the Native Americans and the European. By and large, the Native Americans enjoyed the European metallurgy and hunting buffalo with rifles instead of bows and arrows, and some of the things the Native Americans weren't trying to shove the Europeans away. They were just saying, can we exist? Can we coexist? And for the Europeans, that was an unhavable, and that's a shame. And I think today, those of us who embrace these historically normal, tried and true indigenous patterns are the new Native Americans. And I'm not trying to be irreverent, but we represent that kind of theme. And we've got this conquistador mentality still. They don't wear funny hats and little swords. They wear, pinstripe suits, and they sit in, offices at Wall Street and the U.S. and tell us how we shall live. And so if we had food freedom in this country, farms like ours, the entrepreneurial spirit is very strong, very good. Farms like ours would just explode, because I travel, I talk to thousands of farmers a year, and the latent entrepreneurial, innovative desire is there. But if you butcher a chicken, you're illegal. If you make a pound of sausage and sell it to a neighbor, you're illegal without a $500,000 facility and 5 licenses and 3 zonings and all that. So that's the biggest impediment. And I think that if we could create a 2-tier system, if we could allow a segment of the population that wants to take food, even sign a waiver that if I get food poisoning, I won't go to the hospital. Basically, may I take control of myself? And for those who want to take that risk, let them take that risk. And if they've bought into that system and they show up at the emergency room, you say adios. You're on your own. Die in the street. But I would rather have that.
You didn't really have to go quite that far.
I want to say that to say that what we've got right now are people dying. They're being parted out with diabetes and obesity and childhood leukemia, and they're being parted out in a system that is fundamentally anti-nutrition, anti-human, and we consider that, technological advancement. We consider that really, and the notion that we could kind of primitively or aboriginally or Native Americanly, when it's my time to die, I'll just die. I'm not asking for anything, Why can't we take control of that destiny?
I'm glad I baited you. Questions from the audience? I have one over there.
You've shown us the antithesis of factory farming, and most of us here support that and would like to see more farms like yours flourish. But we can't do that by buying at farmers markets and eating grass-fed beef alone. Next Tuesday, we can make a difference in the food movement. I'm talking about Proposition 37, which calls for GMO labeling. Surprisingly, we haven't talked about it in this class very much.
Do you have a question? Oh, is the question, will you talk about it? Yeah, let's talk about it. You know about Prop 37.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let me say where I am on GMOs. And it might be a little different than some of you here. I think GMOs are fundamentally a trespass issue. And I do not understand why the very first day when one of Monsanto's pollens, not this pollen, another pollen, an E pollen, right, when a Monsanto's pollens drifted across and created a new life form on a neighbor's field that didn't want that life form on their field, why the district attorney didn't quickly, because if a neighbor's bull had gotten in and eaten his corn, he'd have been liable, the guy that owned the bull, right? If a guy got drunk and ran his car through the guy's cornfield and through his fence and trespassed, he'd be liable. But somehow we have this owned patent. I mean, they own it, right? They patented it. I mean, Supreme Court says you can own that life. So this is their critter, okay? That in order to be successful has to be promiscuous. I mean, think about that. In order to be successful, it has to be promiscuous, and it is running roughshod over all boundaries. And why the conservatives in this country who go around and scream property rights, are so blind and cavalier about this when these life forms are coming in and creating, genetic havoc in the countryside, not to mention other things that we don't even know about yet, that just run rampant in the countryside. Why isn't their owner liable for trespass? To me, my bottom line is we don't even need, I don't want to say this, we don't even need a labeling law. If we just took the Magna Carta and basic, English, our heritage of common law and property rights, this should be a non-issue. If you can't keep the technology home, you can't have it. I mean, we don't patent things on automobiles that can jump off of their car onto your car. I mean, if somebody invented a material, and patented it, that when it parked next to your car in the parking lot, jumped off their car onto all your other cars, they wouldn't see the time of day. And so, I read a lot about this, and I don't understand why that blind side has just been, I don't understand.
And it's worse than that, because it's a double standard, of course. If
If
Monsanto finds you growing any of their crops on your land, you're liable.
Not only are they not liable,
right,
but for the privilege of having their life form that I abhor, I get to pay them a royalty. I mean, can you imagine somebody's male dog getting let loose in your neighborhood, going around and impregnating all the females, and everybody's got a bunch of puppies they didn't want, and them having to pay the... That's crazy.
I never thought about it that way.
That's crazy. Yeah, I'm not a friend of GMOs. Okay.
Anyway, I'll just add one thing to that, that, this fight is really heating up. And if you've turned on the television in the last 3 weeks, you've seen an avalanche of advertising from who you wouldn't know, because the type has gotten so small at the end of these ads. You need a large screen TV and a magnifying glass to know that Monsanto and DuPont are paying for these ads. Anyway, they have decimated support for this proposition. It was at 65% when this started, and it's down under 50%. So there's a very good chance it's going to lose. And the reason it's going to lose is simply because they have polluted the airwaves with a lot of very deceptive arguments.
You have to understand that if our kind of farming, back to your first question, why isn't this more done? If our kind of farming were widely adapted, it completely inverts the power, position, prestige, and profitability of the entire food and farming system. And that's bigger than automobiles. It's bigger than military. It's the food and farming economy
industry.
Absolutely is the largest.
Why does it do that, though? Why does that happen?
Well, because this system becomes a fundamentally decentralized, democratized, localized system, and the current system is predicated completely on globalized, centralized, tyrannical systems, that exclude.
Okay, I want a question from a student. The question is, I just want to repeat it. How do you balance pasture, when you have cows on, when you move to pigs, and how do you keep it all in balance?
Okay, the cows and pigs are not on the same pasture. The cows and turkeys and chickens are on the same pasture. Different times of the year, but they're on the same acreage. The pigs have their own devoted acreage because they do disturb it quite a lot. And we can't, and when you're running those chickens out there, you can't have, divots and the kind of disturbance that pigs create. So we have dedicated pig pastures, and then the rest, the others for the cows and the chickens and the turkeys they all run the same ground.
Yes. Want to repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, how does this work in a brittle environment and an urban environment? An ecologically brittle environment or an urban environment. First of all, on the brittle environment, these principles work exactly the same as they do in a temperate, with some tweaking. The production will never be as high in an arid environment as it is in a less arid one. However, there are incredible things that can be done in arid environments to greatly stimulate the ecology. The first one is hydrology, hydration. I've just come back yesterday from 2 weeks in Australia, and I was there at a Polyculture Farm Australia, the first one that we've agreed to let use the Polyface word in their advertising. And it was dramatic. These folks have built, in the last 6 years, they've built, 8 ponds, and they've now been able to double their rainfall by catching the runoff and then metering it out during the dry times. And of course, Australia is the world's arguably the world's driest continent. And so, if you drive down through Nevada, through New Mexico, you'll see these huge arroyos, these dry arroyos, And you Spanish people, hope you appreciated my arroyos, okay? And you've got these. They're big dry riverbeds, and you're going along, and your first question is, why are they building all these ATV trails and motorcycle trails? Because that's all you see running around. Oh, but 10 days a year they run full with water, and so the idea of hydrating the landscape is is foundational to building forgiveness in. And the beauty of hydrating the landscape this way, so what we should have been doing, instead of blowing this petroleum bonanza, if we could say it's a bonanza, all right? If instead of blowing this petroleum bonanza in segregating our food system and long-distance transportation, if instead we had used it to reshape the landscape, to hydrate it, then we could have eliminated floods and droughts, and we could have bloomed the desert in perpetuity, because what we would have done would have been had 1,000-year, lasting benefits. So that's arid. All right, the same principles work, modification, but hydrating is the deal. Urban landscapes amazingly have lots of edible spots in them. As I walked over here from the hotel, I was, the beautiful campus. But just imagine if all of the or not all, I like flowers too. So imagine if 60% of the ornamentals on this campus were edible. I mean, you could make it sexy if you wanted to by dividing the campus into grids, and using smartphones. So every time you wake up in the morning, there's a little beep on your smartphone, a little app, and you pull it up, and it says, Sector 37, the strawberries are ready, and the students go over and pick strawberries. And tomorrow, it beeps, Sector 45, the apricots are ready, you go over and pick apricots. And the students could just kind of graze, between classes. And let me just mention one more, because I think it'll speak directly to this integration idea. We give a lot of dining services today are getting Greenie awards for separating out kitchen scraps and sending them off to composting. Off on a diesel truck to a compost pile, and then they come back as compost to go around the flowers and azaleas and the little pretties. Well, that's still a fundamentally segregated system. What if you put a little chicken house next to the back door of each dining services, and all the kitchen scraps go right into the chickens. The chickens eat them, lay eggs. Now you don't have to put the kitchen scraps or the eggs on a diesel truck, and the whole thing cycles. A city in Belgium, 8 years ago, Pat Foreman writes about this in her book, City Chicks. They offered 6,000 free chickens. I know this is government, but anyway. 6,000 free chickens. What they offered was 3 chickens per family to anyone who wanted to sign up for 3 free chickens, laying hens. And 2,000 families signed up. And so they got 6,000 chickens, distributed them to 2,000 families. In the first month, it stopped decomposable material to the landfill by 100 tons. That's an integrated system. That's a fundamentally integrated system. And I could go on all day on those, but you get the picture. And so in the urban area, while arguably urban areas maybe wouldn't be the right place for dairies and beef cattle and stuff, the beauty of that kind of thing is that it is nutrient dense. Beef is nutrient dense. When we come to produce and fruit, that has to be done close to home because you can't afford to ship water that far. When Daniel Boone went to scope out Kentucky, he wasn't dangling cucumbers and squash and watermelons on his saddlebags. He was taking dried beef and jerky and moldy cheese and nuts and dried fruit, probably fruit leather, whatever. He wasn't taking water. And today, we're sending all this. When I go in New England, how can we do this in New England? It's cold all the time, blah, blah, blah. Listen, if you took all the petroleum currently being used to transport mescaline mix from California to New Hampshire in the wintertime, and took that petroleum and put it into plastic for tall tunnels and solariums on the southern exposure of every house and building in New England to extend seasons, you could not only passively heat the houses and buildings, but you grow your own mescaline mix. Now you wouldn't grow, tomatoes and, hot season stuff, but cool, cold crops, broccoli and cabbage. Mescaline mix could be grown. Now, California can feed itself. And you can feed yourself. We shut down the trucks. We shut down the asphalt. And we've now invested. We've taken this petroleum and bonanza and invested in a sustainable future instead of just blowing it on stupidity.
We've got time for a couple more. Yes.
Great. Yeah, the question, how do you sell? I mean, you know, the supermarket, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, our position is you should view the supermarket as a drug addiction. And you should just, reduce the drug addiction. So we don't desire to be at the supermarket. We see that, I mean, supermarkets were only here in 1946. They're a relatively new invention. And we just don't see a real, big need for supermarkets in their current form. Now, food. So the way we sell is we sell on farm, and we have people that drive a long ways, but they buy a volume. They come in their minivan and they get their year's supply, and they go home to a chest freezer, and it's a one day deal. Instead of going to Disney World, they go to their farm. I mean. Look, there's enough money in the system. If we took all the money that's spent gambling in Las Vegas, Hollywood celebrities, and Taco Bell and Kentucky Fried, and put that in local artisanal food systems, and the money spent in Iraq and Afghanistan, making sure we get cheap oil, there's plenty of money in the system. It surprised me when I was with Ann Cooper, the chef, okay, that we did the math, and it turned out that in something like 3 weeks of what we spent in Iraq, in 3 weeks, if 3 weeks of that money had been given to the school lunch program, it would have doubled the allocation for every single child in America. It would have doubled it for the whole year that we spent. I mean, there's money in the system, okay? There's money in the system. So we go to urban sectors with a metropolitan buying club model, which is essentially using electronic aggregation. It's the same software as PayPal and Amazon stuff. And we see this really happening now. We participate with another outfit called Relay Foods that's an electronic aggregator. And what
Explain how that works.
How it works is you collaborate with 30, 40, some of them 100 farmers in a bioregion, and the shopping is done on the internet, okay? So it's a virtual supermarket on the internet, but it's all local, and weekly then the farm sends a gopher truck, goes to each of the farms and picks up the orders for that week, spends a night, putting them together maybe, and then meets everybody at drop points in the city. And it's extremely efficient. The problem that local food has had is we haven't had an efficient enough we haven't had an aggregator to get the distribution as efficient as the supermarket system. And what's happening now is with the internet and with now savvy buyers, we're able to electronically aggregate, so we don't have the bricks and the mortar. I mean, the success of Amazon, PayPal, Craigslist, and all these electronic interfaces is they do it without a cashier and without a physical structure. And so if we can create a local food system that doesn't require the duplication of the bricks and mortar and cashiers, suddenly we come in as a guerrilla marketer, as a kind of a revolutionary undercurrent, if you will, underneath, and build our system without participating in the current paradigm. And that's the way real cultural change and innovation occurs.
I think we have time for one more. You've got it.
Young farmers?
What do you say to young students who want to become young
students who
farmers?
want to be young farmers. First of all, I salute you. And I do, it's right under your chair. I do promote the Jeffersonian intellectual agrarian, and I think that there is no tension between brains and brawn. And in fact, if we had not been stereotyping the hillbilly redneck, trip over the transmission, tobacco spitting, ungrammatical farmer, you finally run out of adjectives,
You'll never run out of adjectives.
If we hadn't been doing that for so long, maybe we would have brought more thoughtfulness to our brawn. And so I think that if we're going to farm well, we must think well. And in order to think well, we have to embrace intellectual capacity. And so when I speak to farmers, I say, what are you reading? You know, read widely. You know, business books. You know, read one side, read the other side. Read eclectically, widely, and in many different fields. And so, you know, so you need to you need to be the best and the brightest, not, you know, well, I'm the dummy, so I stayed on the farm. I mean, very frustrating to me. So, that being said, you're in a good position. And so what's the next step? The next step is to find an opportunity and bloom where you're planted. And that may be, you know, putting a tomato plant in a pot on the patio of your dorm room. I mean, I'm being very, but you know, get rid of the snake and the gerbil and put in 2 chickens, you know, in your apartment. I mean, they're a lot more fun and they're a lot more useful, you know. And here's the thing. Everybody wants a roadmap, and I'm not, and believe me, I'm with you, okay? But I can't give you a roadmap into this because tomorrow's opportunity is predicated on today's inertia move. And most of us, are you doing exactly what you thought you would 40 years ago, Mike?
No.
No, okay, and neither am I, okay? And the fact is, most middle-aged people, we're middle-aged, yeah, we're middle-aged, right? Life takes paths, okay? And movement creates movement. And so what you need to do is start and place yourself. I'll tell you a story. I ran into a lady in the middle of an urban sector. She lived in a condominium. She wanted to start farming. Where do I start? She went to her landlord. She said, would you mind if I had a 10-foot by 10-foot spot here on the corner of the condominium lawn? All right, you know, there was a little postage stamp area. He said, sure, that'd be fine. So she went over. He was so impressed with what she did, he said, do you want more? Well, in no time, she was farming the entire little, you know, area around the condominium. He had friends. They came and looked at it. Next thing you know, she's a full-time farmer farming condominium lawns in the city. You know, we just can't let something stop us. You know, we just have to keep moving forward the direction we want to go, and tomorrow's door will open up as we step on the threshold. And that's the only thing I know to say. I mean, I could tell you, you know, here's how this person started, this person. Every person's story is different. And so, you know, don't let the passion go out of your belly. You know, read and feed that passion. I don't mean feed food. I mean feed with friends. Surround yourself with people who want to believe in you, not people who think you're going to waste your education by going and being a farmer. You need to surround yourself with the cheerleaders, you know, and as you head for that goal line. And I hope that was okay. I like being surrounded by cheerleaders. They're pretty cool, you know. So just start that movement, and that faithfulness and perseverance will be rewarded down the line. Don't even try to say, I want to be here at, you know, 35 years old or whatever. Don't even try. Just say, I can do this today. And I know I can do this today. And then tomorrow will be the accumulation of all the little faithful days that you put together between now and then.
I think that's a great note to end on. Please join me in thanking Joel.
Thank you.